last week you had names like Devontae Adams and Josh Allen and Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Mike Evans. These guys, they went off in fantasy football and they helped you advance to the next round of the fantasy playoffs. Well, in today's video, I'm bringing you 10 players that will do the same in week 16. 10 guys that will lead you to the promised land, will lead you to the fantasy championship next week. Starting off with Jahmyr Gibbs. Yes, I know everybody is starting Jahmyr Gibbs. I want you to take a second and look at the title of this video. It is called 10 Players That Are About to Go Nuclear. And we're in the playoffs, so we're talking about big boys on today's video, right? Jahmyr Gibbs faces the Chicago Bears. The Bears are the 6th best matchup for your fantasy running back. The Bears this year, against running backs, for example, Chuba Hubbard had over 17 points. James Conner had 15 points, didn't even get a touchdown. Josh Jacobs had over 23 points. Isaac Correndo, who was one of our starts of the week that week, had over 26 points. Aaron Jones in 2 games this year had over 18 points. And the Bears defense, you can attack them on the ground. It's a little bit more difficult to attack them through the air. They give up the 7th most rushing yards per game and the 6th highest yards per carry allowed as well. And look, the matchup is great, but Jahmyr Gibbs might be the best running back in fantasy football rest of the way because, as we know, David Montgomery no longer available. David Montgomery went on a season-ending, he had a season-ending injury to his knee. Dan Campbell said we're going to miss him. You know, I believe it was his MCL that was torn. It's extremely sad. And if you have David Montgomery, let's give him a little moment of silence here. Because I feel you, I had him and I'm advancing into the playoffs. I'm worried about this week. But if you have Jahmyr Gibbs, well, it's your time to turn up. It's time to pop the champagne bottles because he's probably going to lead you to a championship. It's a healthy over-under, 46.5 points. The Lions are favored by 7 points. They should be rushing the ball deep into the second half. And this team is tied for the 5th highest implied team point total on the week with 26 points. I believe we're seeing at least 20 touches for Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, he's going to dominate. 100 plus all-purpose yards. He's going to get a touchdown. He's going to get 20 plus PPR points in my humble opinion. All right, the second player that we're going to rock with here, and I do have this player in the Flock League, so there might be some bias, but Malik Neighbors at the Atlanta Falcons. Guys, there is not a better matchup in fantasy football for your wide receiver than the Atlanta Falcons. Point blank period. It's the best matchup you could hope for. Here's what they've done against wide receivers this year. Mike Evans had 2 tuds, 23 points. Deontay Johnson, who when he was a Panther when he did this, almost had 20 points. DK Metcalf, one of his few good games this year, almost 20 points. Ladd McConkey had 117 yards, no touchdowns, still almost 20 points. And Jordan Addison had a 3-touchdown game, almost a 40-burger against this team. And at this point, we know Malik Neighbors' floor is quarterback proof. I mean, he's had Daniel Jones, right? Then he had Drew Lock, and then he had Tommy DeVito, and now Tim Boyle last week. Well, Tim Boyle's the one who threw him the touchdown. We know his floor is safe regardless of the quarterback. He hasn't had a game under 10 PPR points since week 7, and the Giants are huge underdogs, almost 10-point dogs on the week, meaning we should see this team throwing all the way into the 4th quarter. You know, Malik Neighbors had pretty much a garbage time touchdown last week. Why can't that happen again this week? It's actually a very similar scenario to what we were projecting last week. I'm projecting at least 12 targets, 80 plus yards, and 15 plus PPR points. And that takes me to my spicy hot bold take of the week, Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans. Did we just become best friends? Yep. They're going to continue this hot streak that they're on in Dallas. They're going to bring out the spanking paddle. Did you have a paddle growing up? Did you have a spoon? Okay, no, we can't spank anymore in today's society. But Baker is going to finish top 6. And Mike Evans is going to have another 20-plus point game as Mike Evans inches closer and closer to another 1,000-yard season. So here's the deal. Dallas, the 4th best matchup for your quarterback and the 2nd best matchup for your wide receiver. I believe Baker Mayfield's going to go off. In fact, I need your help. In the Flock League, I'm in the semifinals. I have Joe Burrow and I have Baker Mayfield. I'm a little bit worried about Joe Burrow because the Browns are starting DTR and I just don't know how much they're going to need to throw the ball. What would you guys do? All right. I actually am asking for your help. Would you start Joe Burrow or would you start Baker Mayfield? I love Baker Mayfield's outlook, but I could be, playing, chess when I should be playing checkers here. But the Cowboys against quarterbacks this year, Jared Goff had 3 tuds. He went off. Brock Purdy had 2 tuds over 26 points. Jaden Daniels had over 36 points. Joe Burrow, who played this defense recently, had 3 touchdowns over 30 points. And if you look at wide receivers, I mean, it's the same story. Terry McLaurin over 21 points. Malik Neighbors over 15. Jamar Chase over 45. Jalen Coker last week had over 21. And Adam Thielen gave you a safe floor. The Cowboys defense in 2024, top 7 in total yards allowed per game and giving up the 3rd most offensive points per game to opposing offenses. It's also the highest over-under of the week at 49.5 points. The Bucs are the 4th highest implied team point total. So you can see why I'm having this little like inner battle right now between Baker and Joe Burrow. I want to hear your thoughts, but my prediction this week, Baker Mayfield has 300 plus yards, 3 tuds, a top 6 finish. Mike Evans with at least 8 targets, 80 yards, and 20 plus PPR points. All right, moving on. We've got James Conner at the Carolina Panthers. James Conner was on the video last week. If you guys remember when we were doing our trade videos for the fantasy playoffs, he was also a name that we told you to go trade for. Last week, first week of the playoffs, he has a 30 bomb. Well, we're going to continue to ride him through the playoffs. Okay, not in that way. All right, calm down. My RB10 on the week, Carolina's the 3rd best matchup for your running back. Chase Brown had 23 points against these guys. DeAndre Swift had 20. Bijan had 2 tuds, 25 points. In the same game, Tyler Algier almost had 20 points. Bucky Irving had one of his best days as a pro. Alvin Kamara in 2 games had over 22 fantasy points. The Panthers defense is top 2 or the worst, or the best rather, for your opposing matchup in rushing yards allowed per game, total yards allowed per game, and total points given up per game. It's a dream from a fantasy perspective for your running back. And the Cardinals are actually tied for the 5th highest implied team point total on the week. I'm predicting at least 18 touches, 100 plus all-purpose yards, and a touchdown for James Conner this week. All right, at number 6, not going to lie to you guys, I am a little bit worried about this because I am facing this player in the Flock League. That is Brock Bowers versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. All right, the Jags are the 3rd best matchup for your tight end. This year, TJ Hawkinson had 72 yards against them and 15 points. Dalton Schultz recently had 60 yards and a touchdown over 17 points. The Jags, man, they're giving up the most yards per game to opposing offenses and the 5th most total points allowed per game. And I think they might be getting Aiden O'Connell back. I am really concerned, but if you own Brock Bowers, you should be very excited. I'm predicting 8 receptions and 17 plus PPR points. All right, the 7th player, with confidence, again, we said big names today, CeeDee Lamb versus the Tampa Bay Bucks. The Bucks are the 9th best matchup for your wide receiver. Darnell Mooney had 18 points. DeAndre Hopkins had 28, his best game as a Chief. Juwan Jennings had 16 with no tud. Adam Thielen almost had 24 with a tud. Ladd McConkey last week had almost 17. The Bucks defense, man, 3rd most passing yards allowed per game and the 6th most total yards allowed per game. And like we talked about earlier, this is the highest over-under of the week. So I'm projecting at least 10 targets, 100 plus yards, and 20 plus PPR points. You know, Cooper Rush is really starting to kind of find his stride with this team. And that's why I think this game could ultimately actually be a competitive game. I'm very excited to watch it, as I know you are as well. All right, the 8th player that's going to dominate this week. He's been dominating for the last 7 weeks in a row, but Josh Jacobs, Jingleheimer Schmidt, this man is going to win some people some fantasy championships. The Saints are the 2nd best matchup for your running back. Remember that game? Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker both went absolutely nuclear against this defense. Bucky had 18, Sean Tucker had 34. Javonte Williams had his best game ever in his entire career against this team with 26 points. Chuba Hubbard had 21 points. Bijan Robinson almost had a 30-burger. And the Saints defense, man, I mean, they're struggling. Their offense can't stay on the field, and their defense can't hold up long enough. They're giving up the 2nd highest yards per rush, the 6th most rushing yards per game, and the 3rd most total yards per game to opposing offenses. And the Packers are huge favorites. 13.5 point favorites in this game. I mean, Josh Jacobs is going to be running that clock out in the 4th quarter, guys. 2nd highest implied team point total as well to the Packers with 28 points. I'm predicting 20 touches or more and at least 100 yards, 18 plus PPR points for Josh Jacobs. All right, the 9th player. If you somehow made it through the fantasy playoffs with this guy, like myself, because you had a bye week, do not fret. On Saturday night, I'm predicting him to have a very good bounce back game. That's Derrick Henry versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers are the 12th best matchup for your running back. You can beat them on the ground. They have a pretty good secondary. The Steelers' defense against running backs this year, for example, Breece Hall, who's been mediocre, had over 26 points. Tyrone Tracy had 23. Austin Eckler had 18 and replaced Brian Robinson. Nick Chubb had his only relevant game this entire season against these guys. Chase Brown had 19 points. I'm predicting 120 plus all-purpose yards for Derrick Henry. They're going to be intentional about getting him involved. That's what went wrong the last time they played these guys. The game got out of hand. They didn't focus on establishing the run. I think they're going to fix their wrongs or make them right? 2 touchdowns. I'm predicting 2 tuds, 25 plus PPR points. And yeah, it's bold, but I got a feeling. All right, and the last player we'll talk about in today's video is Jackson Smith and Jigba versus the Minnesota Vikings, the 3rd best matchup for your wide receivers. Now, here's what we heard recently from Mike McDonald. Says Geno Smith should be able to practice and play this week. So that is a good sign for his availability. I can't tell you for sure if he's going to be available at the time of recording this video, but it looks like a good sign. If he's not available, at least, you know, JSN is like this reliable safety blanket for Sam Howell out of the slot. But look at how many wide receivers have dominated the Vikings this year. Amon-Ra had 25. Puka had 18. DJ had his best game. Keenan in the same game had 23. Marvin Harrison had a good game. Darnell Mooney had 142 yards. I mean, this defense, you attack them through the air. They give it the 4th most passing yards per game and the 2nd fewest rushing yards allowed per game. And if you look at week 9 onwards, JSN, the breakout has truly been there. JSN from week 9 onwards is 4th in points per game amongst wide receivers. Only Devontae Adams, Jerry Jeudy, and Jamar Chase have a higher points per game. By the way, I wanted to put Jerry Jeudy in this video, but they're starting DTR. I don't know why. I know why for football. It just sucks for fantasy football. But JSN, I think, has a safe floor, 9 catches, 100 yards. I love the way that they're using him this week. But I appreciate y'all for watching the video. Do me a favor, hit that like button and show some love. Subscribe if you like the content. And the last thing I'll say is if you need a question answered and you want to reach out to me, check out the pinned comment. You can ask me a question on our website at any time. I will say we will not be recording videos next week because it is a holiday. We are taking 2 weeks off, and then we'll be over on our Dynasty channel in the off season. So good luck, but if you need to reach us, you can do it on the website. And if you're over there, you can create a free account with the promo code LAND. Appreciate you guys. Let's go get some championships, or at least advance it to the next round. You got this. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, LAND, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.